I gave 2 decades to a man who called me family, only to be told at 55 I'd expired like yesterday's discount special. I walked out with a cardboard box, a non-compete that caged me, and the dread that loyalty means nothing in America's boardrooms. 3 weeks later, a forgotten passbook from 1985 yanked me out of freefall and into my parents' quiet, blue-collar genius. A 40-year plan built $5 and $10 at a time that didn't just change my bank balance. It changed everything I believed about value, time, and worth. You're watching Revenge Files. Subscribe for a new twist daily. My name is Daniel Farrow. Until 3 months ago, I was the operations manager for the Bianco restaurant group. 7 Italian restaurants across Ohio that I helped build from a single storefront into a 7-location operation. I knew every supplier, every recipe, every health code violation we ever fixed at 2 in the morning. I trained every manager, solved every crisis, and when the owner's family members stole from him, I quietly handled it to save him the embarrassment. I'm not telling you this story because I want pity. I'm telling you because sometimes life kicks you so hard you think you'll never get up, and then you discover your parents saw it coming 40 years ago and laid down a safety net you never even knew existed. This is about more than money. It's about how 2 factory workers from Cleveland understood something about value that a millionaire restaurant owner never could. My father, Edward, died in 2010. He worked 43 years at the Ford plant in Brook Park, never missed a day, never complained. My mother, Darlene, passed 5 years later. She assembled circuit boards at Lincoln Electric, her fingers nimble and precise even at 70. They lived in the same 3-bedroom ranch they bought in 1978. They drove used cars. They mowed their own lawn until the day they couldn't. And apparently, while they were clipping coupons and shopping sales, they were also orchestrating the greatest magic trick I've ever seen. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you what it feels like to give your entire adult life to someone else's dream, only to be told you're too old to matter anymore. Let me tell you about the morning I walked into a bank with nothing but desperation and walked out understanding my entire life differently. Most importantly, let me tell you why my parents, who never had more than $5,000 in their checking account at any given time, knew something about Warren Buffett that would one day save their son from complete ruin. This isn't just my story. It's the story of every person who's ever been told they've aged out of relevance. It's for everyone who's wondered if loyalty means anything anymore. And it's definitely for anyone who's ever underestimated their parents' wisdom because it came wrapped in a brown bag lunch instead of a Harvard degree. So, let me take you back to 3 months ago, to the mahogany-paneled office where Sam Bianco, the man who once called me his American son, explained why 55 years old was apparently the expiration date on my usefulness. His actual son, Riley, sat beside him, 28, soft hands that had never scraped a grill or mopped a freezer at midnight, telling me about new directions and fresh perspectives while I stared at the photo on Sam's desk from our first restaurant opening, where I'm standing next to him. Both of us covered in flour and laughing because we'd just survived a lunch rush from hell with only 2 working burners. That photo was about to become evidence in the case for why some investments take longer to mature than others, and why my parents, may they rest in peace, were financial prophets disguised as blue-collar workers who saved aluminum foil and reused Ziploc bags. I started working for Sam when I was 35 years old. Back then, he had one small Italian restaurant called Nana's Table in downtown Cleveland, right off East 9th Street. The place seated 40 people if you squeezed them in, and the kitchen was so small you had to turn sideways to pass another person. But Sam had something special, his grandmother's recipes from Tuscany, and a dream bigger than that cramped dining room could hold. I met him through my cousin Mark, who delivered produce to restaurants. "This guy needs help," Mark told me one Sunday at my mother's house. "His books are a disaster, his inventory's a mess. But Daniel, the man can cook, and he's got fire in his belly." I was working as an assistant manager at a hardware store then, making decent money but going nowhere. My wife Laura was pregnant with our son Miles, and I needed something more. The first time I walked into Nana's Table, Sam was screaming at a supplier in Italian while simultaneously stirring 3 pots on the stove. He looked at me, pointed a sauce-covered wooden spoon and said, "You the numbers guy Mark sent?" Can you start now? I got tax papers somewhere in that box. Maybe that one, who knows? And the refrigerator delivery guy wants a check, but I don't know if I got money in the account. That was Sam. Chaos and passion stirred together like his marinara. I found his tax papers under a stack of meat invoices. His checking account had plenty of money. He just hadn't recorded any deposits for 3 months. By the end of that first day, I'd organized his disaster of an office, negotiated a better price with the refrigerator, and helped serve dinner when his waiter called in sick. "You stay," Sam declared at closing time, handing me a plate of the best lasagna I'd ever tasted. "I make you my operations manager," he grinned. "What's operations manager?" "I don't know, but you manage everything that isn't cooking, deal?" Laura understood why I said yes. "He believes in you," she said that night, her hand on her growing belly. "And you believe in him." That's rare, Daniel. For 20 years, that belief drove everything I did. When Sam wanted to open a second location, I found the property, negotiated the lease, and supervised the renovation while still running the original restaurant. I trained every server to know that Mrs. Henderson liked her chicken paragana with extra sauce on the side, that Mr. Peterson was allergic to oregano, that the Johnsons celebrated their anniversary every March 15th with a bottle of the same Quanti. My son Miles grew up doing homework in restaurant booths. My daughter Rachel learned to count by helping me inventory dinner rolls. Laura brought the kids for dinner every Friday, and Sam would come out of the kitchen, flower in his grey hair, booming, "These are my American grandkids. Miles, you getting tall like a basketball player. Rachel, beautiful like your mother." The business expanded year by year. The third restaurant opened when I was 42. The fourth and fifth came together when I was 47. Each time I was there, from blueprint to grand opening. I knew which contractors wouldn't overcharge, which equipment would last, which neighborhoods would embrace an Italian restaurant. I created the training manuals, the inventory systems, the scheduling software that kept everything running. But more than systems, I managed the human disasters. When Sam's nephew at location number 3 started skimming from the register, I caught him and handled it quietly. When the head chef at location number 5 had a breakdown and disappeared with a week's worth of meat, I stepped into the kitchen myself and cooked for 3 days straight until we found a replacement. When Sam's brother-in-law tried to sue him over some imagined slight, I mediated at 2 in the morning in Sam's living room. "Daniel, you're not just my employee," Sam would say during our late-night strategy sessions. "You're family. This empire we're building, it's for all of us. My children, your children. We're creating something that lasts." I believed him, God help me. I believed every word. When my father died and I needed 3 days off for the funeral, Sam came to the service, stood next to me at the grave and said, "Edward raised a good son. He would be proud of what you've built." When my mother got sick 5 years later, Sam sent food to the hospice every day. "Family takes care of family," he said. By my 55th birthday, we had 7 restaurants employing over 200 people. I knew every one of their names, their kids' names, their stories. I thought I was building something permanent, something that mattered. I thought loyalty and dedication added up to security. I was wrong about Sam, but as it turned out, I was also wrong about my parents, who were playing a longer game than any of us could see. 3 weeks after my 55th birthday, everything changed. It was a Tuesday morning in March, unseasonably cold. I arrived at the flagship at 7:30 a.m., like always, and was reviewing the previous night's receipts when Sam's secretary, Marilyn, called. "Mr. Bianco wants to see you in his office. Riley will be there too." Riley, Sam's youngest son, fresh out of Wharton, had been hanging around for 6 months. He wore $1,000 suits and carried a leather portfolio everywhere, tapping on his tablet while watching the rest of us work. He'd never rolled a single piece of silverware into a napkin, never stayed past 9, never faced down an angry customer or a broken freezer on a Saturday night. But he had opinions about everything. I walked into Sam's office at the new corporate building we'd leased the previous year. Sam sat behind his massive oak desk, the one I helped him pick out at an estate sale. Riley lounged in the leather chair beside him, scrolling his phone. The walls were covered with photos from our 11 grand openings over the years. In every single one, I was right there beside Sam. "Daniel, my friend," Sam began, and immediately I knew something was wrong. In 20 years, he'd never called me friend with that particular tone, like he was apologizing for something that hadn't happened yet. "Please, sit down." I sat. Riley put his phone away and opened his portfolio, pulling out a stack of papers covered in colorful graphs. "Mr. Farrow, I've been conducting a comprehensive analysis of our operations," he began, not even letting his father speak. "We need to discuss restructuring." "Restructuring," I repeated, looking at Sam, but he stared at his hands. "Sam, last month you told me profits were up 30%. We're about to open number 8 in Westlake." "The business model needs updating," Riley continued. "We're implementing digital ordering systems, social media campaigns, influencer partnerships. The restaurant industry has evolved beyond traditional management structures." "I can learn new systems," I said, my mouth suddenly dry. "Sam, you know I always adapt. Remember when we switched to computerized inventory? I mastered it in a week." Sam finally looked up, and his eyes were empty of the warmth I'd known for 2 decades. "Daniel, you're too old for this business now. These young people, they speak a different language. Instagram this, TikTok that. Riley understands this world." Too old. The words hit like ice water. "I'm 55, not 75. I work 70 hours a week. Last Tuesday, when the main refrigeration unit failed at location 2, who fixed it at midnight? Last month, when the health inspector showed up for a surprise at location 6, who handled it?" "That's exactly the point," Riley interjected. "We don't need someone fixing refrigerators anymore. We need someone who understands data analytics, conversion rates, digital engagement metrics." I stood up, legs shaking. "Sam, I created the systems that run every one of your restaurants. I trained every manager. When your own family members stole from you, I protected you." "Don't be dramatic," Sam said, waving a hand. "This is business. You knew this day would come." "Did I?" "When you called me family. When you stood at my father's funeral. When you promised we were building something together." Riley slid a paper across the desk. 2 weeks severance for each year of service, 40 weeks pay. It's very generous. The termination agreement was effective immediately. After 20 years, I wouldn't even get to say goodbye to the staff. My hands trembled as I read the non-compete clause preventing me from working at any restaurant within 50 miles for 2 years. "You're blackballing me from the only industry I know," I said quietly. "That's standard," Riley replied. "Sign here and here." I looked at Sam one more time. "You told me I was like a son to you." He shrugged, casual as a flicked crumb. "I have sons, real sons. Business is business, Daniel," I signed. What choice did I have? 40 weeks of pay seemed like a fortune for 5 minutes, until I remembered Miles's college tuition, Rachel's orthodontist bills, the mortgage with 15 years left. I walked out with a check that might last 6 months if we were careful, and a non-compete that made me unemployable in the only field where I had expertise. Tom, the security guard I'd hired 3 years earlier, couldn't meet my eyes as I cleared my desk. 20 years fit into one cardboard box. As I reached my car, I saw Riley already in what had been my office, feet up on my desk, laughing into his phone. Telling Laura was the hardest thing I've ever done. She was folding laundry when I came home at 11 a.m., something I'd never done in 20 years. One look at my face and the box in my hands, and the basket dropped to the floor. "He fired you?" she whispered, sinking onto the couch. "Sam fired you?" I sat and explained everything, the meeting, Riley's graphs, the non-compete that basically banned me from restaurants. Laura didn't cry at first. She stared at the wall where we'd hung a photo from Sam's 65th birthday party, the one where he had his arm around me, raising a glass to the best operations manager in Ohio. "We'll figure it out," she finally said, voice hollow. "You'll find something else." For 2 weeks I tried, dozens of resumes, every restaurant job off limits. I applied for management roles in retail, manufacturing, logistics. The responses were all the same: "We've decided to go with a candidate whose experience better matches our needs." Translation: someone younger. One hiring manager, the honest kind, said it on a phone screen. "Look, Daniel, you're clearly qualified, but my boss won't hire anyone over 50. He thinks they can't adapt to our culture." Our savings dwindled. Miles called from college, excited about a summer internship that required housing in Chicago. $3,000 we didn't have. Rachel needed new soccer cleats and tournament fees. The car made an expensive sound. The water heater gave up. One morning, after another sleepless night adding and re-adding numbers, I dug through my mother's papers, hunting for any bond or forgotten asset. She kept everything in an old filing cabinet in the basement, organized in precise handwriting. Tax returns from the 1970s, my report cards, every birthday card we ever gave her. That's when I found it. A small yellow envelope marked, Daniel, First Federal Bank, 1985. Inside was a passbook for a savings account I'd forgotten existed. The day came back in high def. I was 15 with my first paycheck from Henderson's Hardware, $20 for stocking shelves. My grandfather, Thomas, pipe tobacco and peppermints, drove me to First Federal Bank. Every man needs his own money, he said, guiding my hand on the deposit slip. This is yours. Don't touch it until you really need it. Not for a car, not for a girl, only a real emergency. I deposited $20 and forgot about it. Life happened. College, marriage, kids, Sam's restaurants. The account sat for 40 years. First Federal got bought by Ohio Trust in the 90s, then by Midwest National in 2010. The old Pearl Road building was now glass and chrome where brick and marble used to be. I walked in feeling foolish, holding a 40-year-old passbook like an artifact. The teller, a young woman named Brianna with perfect nails, blinked like I'd handed her a fossil. Oh, wow. This is seriously vintage. I've never seen one outside of training photos. I know it's old, I said, embarrassed. The account probably doesn't exist. No, these old accounts are valid. They just need special handling. Let me get my manager. She loves this stuff. The branch manager, Paula Holstead, appeared within minutes. 40s, professional kind, the sort who actually looks at you when she talks. She examined the passbook, running a finger along the number. Mr. Farrow, this is fascinating. These old First Federal accounts are rare. Let me look it up in our legacy system. She led me to her office. Green text on a black screen. She typed the number, stopped, hovered over the keys, took off her glasses, cleaned them, typed again. Is there a problem? I asked, heart sinking. Is the account closed? No, Mr. Farrow. The account is very much active. But there's something unusual here, something I've never seen before. She angled the monitor. After your initial deposit, there were automatic transfers, $5 every month from 1985 to 2010 from account holder Edward Farrow. Then, from 2010 to 2015, $10 monthly from Darlene Farrow. My parents? My throat tightened. They never mentioned this, not once. That isn't the unusual part, Paula said, voice turning amazed. Those deposits weren't just sitting in savings. They were routed to a brokerage sweep that purchased the same stock every month for 40 years. Mr. Farrow, do you know Berkshire Hathaway? The room tilted. Warren Buffett's company. Exactly. Your parents were buying fractional shares of Berkshire Hathaway Class A every month since 1985. Do you know what those shares were worth then versus now? She typed again. $2,050 per share in 1985. One Class A share trades around $543,000 today. Your $5 and $10 contributions bought fractional shares, which accumulated over time. With compounding, and with Buffett's no-split approach, your current account balance is $3,742,816.34. There's been a mistake, I said. My parents worked factory jobs. They clipped coupons. The Social Security numbers match, Paula said gently. These deposits came from your parents. And there's more. There's a sealed letter in our vault attached to this account. It can only be opened when you access the account. Would you like it? I nodded, speechless. She returned with a yellowed envelope, my name in my mother's careful cursive. Inside was a letter dated June 15th, 1985, and a second note added in 2010 in my father's shaky handwriting. My mother's letter read, Dear Daniel, if you're reading this, you've hit a hard time. We set this up so you'd find it only when you truly needed it. Not for a car or a vacation, but when life knocks you down. Your father's cousin Robert works at a bank in Omaha. He told us about a man named Warren Buffett who buys companies and holds them forever, patience over flash. We don't understand all of it, but we understand this. Good things grow slowly. Trees, children, love, and apparently money invested wisely. Every $5 came from somewhere. One less lunch out, walking instead of driving when gas was high, fixing things instead of replacing them. We did it because we know the world can be cruel. Sometimes good, hard-working people get thrown away. If that happens to you, remember your value isn't determined by anyone else. You are our greatest investment. Love, Mom. My father's addendum, 25 years later, still adding money every month, son. Buffett was right about patience. Your mother thinks we should tell you, but I say no. You don't need it yet. You're doing great with Sam. If you ever do, remember we always knew you were worth more than anyone could pay you. Dad, 2010. I didn't realize I was crying until my tears hit the paper. Paula slid a tissue box across the desk. There's also a note from the brokerage, she said softly. Your parents never diversified, never sold, bought through every recession, every boom, every bust. 40 years of $5 and $10. I sat in my car for an hour holding that letter. My parents, who never took a vacation requiring a plane ticket, who celebrated every anniversary at the same local steakhouse, who wore clothes until they fell apart, had been secretly building a fortune for me $5 and $10 at a time. The irony was loud. Sam, with his Mercedes and Rolex, who talked non-stop about building an empire, had thrown me away because he believed my value had an expiration date. Meanwhile, my parents, used Fords and Timex watches, had bet everything on the principle that value compounds over time. When I told Laura, she collapsed on the kitchen floor, sobbing from relief and amazement. Miles drove home from college that night. Rachel kept asking, "Is this real?" We sat at the dining room table until 3 a.m. reading my parents' letter again and again, laughing and crying at the same time. But the money was only part of it. The real gift was the philosophy. They'd invested in Buffett, sure, but more importantly, they believed what he believes. Value investing isn't about quick returns or flashy gains. It's about recognizing true worth and having the patience to let it grow. 2 weeks later, I opened my own restaurant. Nothing fancy, nothing like Sam's places with their imported marble and custom furniture. I found a small spot in Lakewood, the kind of neighborhood joint with good bones that needed love. I named it Edward and Darlene's and hung my parents' picture by the entrance. I hired Martha first. Sam had fired her 6 months before me, telling a 62-year-old she was too old to run a kitchen. She cried when I offered her the job. Then came Hector, 58, who Riley had replaced with someone who knew more about Instagram than insulation. Louise, 67, had been let go from another restaurant for being too slow with technology. She memorized every customer's name and preference within a week. We opened quietly. No social media blitz, no influencer events, just good food, fair prices, and people who cared. Martha's pasta was poetry. Hector kept everything running like a Swiss watch. Louise made every customer feel like they were at their grandmother's table. Word spread the way it used to. One customer telling another. Families came in, then came back, then brought friends. Within 3 months, we had a 45-minute wait on Friday nights. Riley Bianco showed up 6 months after we opened. He stood in the doorway of my packed restaurant, looking smaller than I remembered. His digital revolution had failed spectacularly. 3 of their 7 restaurants had closed. The rest were struggling. "My father wants to know if you'd consider coming back," he said, raising his voice over the happy dinner crowd. "He's willing to discuss terms." I looked around my restaurant. Martha was teaching our newest cook, a 23-year-old named David, how to properly season the sauce. Hector was fixing a wobbly chair while chatting with a couple in Spanish. Louise was bringing out a surprise birthday cake for Mr. Patterson, our Thursday regular who eats alone but never feels alone here. "Tell Sam thanks," I said, "but I'm too old for his business." Riley blinked, confused. "I'm exactly the right age for mine," he left without ordering. I heard later that 2 more Bianco restaurants closed within the year. Sam retired to Florida. His empire shrank back to the original Nana's table, now run by a nephew. Meanwhile, Edward and Darlene's thrives. We're not an empire. We're one room that does the right things the right way. My parents would have loved it, not because of the money, but because of the philosophy. We invest in people not despite their age, but because of it. We value wisdom, patience, and loyalty, the things that actually appreciate over time. The 3+ million? Most of it stays invested, still compounding, because mom and dad taught me the most valuable lesson of all. Wealth isn't about what you can spend. It's about what you can build, what you can pass on, what you can become when someone believes you're worth the investment. Sometimes the greatest fortune isn't finding money you didn't know existed. It's discovering that someone loved you enough to plant trees whose shade they'd never enjoy, believing absolutely that someday, when you needed it most, you'd see your worth was never determined by anyone's opinion. It was always there, quietly growing, waiting for the right season to bloom. If this feels like your story, hear me. Your value didn't evaporate in a conference room. Maybe you just need a different room. Maybe your best returns are still compounding where you can't see them yet, inside your skills, your grit, and the people who would follow you into a kitchen on a Friday because they trust how you move. To anyone told they've aged out, remember, patience isn't passive. It's how steel cools and strength sets. It's how a forgotten passbook becomes a lifeline. It's how a life gets rebuilt brick by brick, plate by plate, face by face. If you got something from this, like the video and share it with someone who's been told their time has passed. And if you want more true American revenge and redemption stories, you're in the right place. You're watching Revenge Files. Subscribe for a new twist daily.